I've been called for jury duty quite a number of times, but the last couple of times have been grand jury and my number hasn't gotten called to sort of show up. But the last time I was actually called, I was still living in Queens at the time. And I went down to, Queens County Superior Court, and I'm sitting there in the giant jury room and they pull me up. My number gets called and I go upstairs, and it was a civil trial. It wasn't, it wasn't sexy. Let's call it that. And the second they say, ma'am, like, what's your current occupation? I was like, I'm unemployed, but I'm in law school. Both attorneys were like, nope, we're good. Thanks. Yeah. You can leave. And I was like, I think it's attractive sometimes, but sometimes not so much.
Welcome to the Founding Partner Podcast. Join your host, Jonathan Hawkins, as we explore the fascinating stories of successful law firm founders. We'll uncover their beginnings, triumph over challenges, and practice growth. Whether you aspire to launch your own firm, have an entrepreneurial spirit, or are just curious about the legal business, you're in the right place. Let's dive in.
Welcome to Founding Partner Podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Hawkins. And today we have with us Sarah Jacobs. She's a family lawyer up in New Jersey. She's going to tell us more about her firm, but it's her and a partner, maybe another named partner, maybe more. So really excited to have you here, Sarah. Why don't you tell us about your firm and sort of the setup, how many lawyers, all that kind of stuff.
Well, first, Jonathan, I want to say thank you so much for hosting me today. I really appreciate you having me on. I'm looking forward to our conversation. You're right. We're based in New Jersey. We're in northern New Jersey in Morristown. And it is me and another named partner, my partner, Jamie. But we also have three other attorneys who work with us. We have a non-equity partner, we have a senior associate, and we have a junior associate. And we're blessed to have 5 robust full-time support staff helping us do what we do every single day.
So you've got a good sized operation going there. We're going to dive into all of that. But first thing I want to know is, why family law? Is that something you always knew you were going to do, or did you fall into it? Tell us how you got there.
I definitely fell into it and knew it wasn't something that I always knew that I was going to do. I think secretly, maybe, when they go through your why, I think that might have come out that it was sort of a subconscious decision that I made. But most of all, when I was in law school, I was in a trial advocacy clinic. I went to law school in Hawkins, Long Island. And at that point, they didn't actually have the family law clinic. So the closest thing we had to it was the child abuse clinic. And I was able to participate in that. And man, did I fall in love with being a trial attorney. I did not want to push paper. I did not want to do transactional work. I wanted to be in that courtroom. So I sort of narrowed it down to civil litigation, criminal litigation, or basically family law. And at that point, I said that I didn't want to be working with potential criminals, nor did I want to be doing litigation about, car accidents or any sort of like high volume corporate work. And I wanted to work with people. I wanted to help people. So that kind of narrowed it down to the field that I'm in. Every day now I laugh because I work with a cross section of pretty much everything I said that I didn't want to do in my life. And I wind up doing that plus more in my daily to-go.
So I got a question. So down here in Georgia, which I don't do family law, but my understanding is this is somewhat unusual compared to many states. We have jury trials for divorce cases. Do you guys have that up there?
No, we don't. We have bench trials only. We do have jury trials if you proceed on an adultery claim. You do have a jury trial for the cause of the action on adultery only, and then a bench trial in the remaining issues. But that is really an interesting development, and I would kind of pay to be a fly on the wall of that jury listening to a family law trial. It's kind of like watching Dateline.
Yeah. Now you have to request it. I think it's not you have the opportunity to do it, but yeah, I think most people avoid that. But yeah, I think occasionally it happens, and I imagine that would be could be a very interesting trial. I mean, if 2 people have gone far enough and they're mad enough and they say, we want a jury, that's going to be an interesting trial, I would think.
I'd like to see what the jury selection process would look like for that, and where you get your preemptive strikes and all of that. Would be I kind of want to come down there now and watch one.
It's interesting. I got called for jury duty, I don't know, I don't know, 8 years ago, and it was a DUI trial. And for those, it was a 6-person jury with one alternate. And as they're polling the jury pool, which I was on, I think 5 of the people had been convicted of DUIs. And so and then this person beside me was like, "Who do you think is going to be on this?" And I was like, "Those 5 are definitely not on it." I was like, "You're definitely on it. I might be, I may not be." And I ended up being on the jury. It was interesting.
I got called for, I've been called for jury duty quite a number of times, but the last couple of times have been grand jury and my number hasn't gotten called to sort of show up. But the last time I was actually called, I was still living in Queens at the time. And I went down to, Queens County Superior Court, and I'm sitting there in the giant jury room and they pull me up. My number gets called and I go upstairs, and it was a civil trial. It wasn't, it wasn't sexy. Let's call it that. And the second they say, ma'am, like, what's your current occupation? I was like, I'm unemployed, but I'm in law school. Both attorneys were like, nope, we're good. Thanks.
Yeah.
You can leave. And I was like, I think it's attractive sometimes, but sometimes not so
And
much.
the only thing worse than a lawyer on the jury is a law student on the jury.
Because we're hungry
That's
right
right.
at that
Yeah.
point, and we think we know everything and we know nothing.
Exactly. Well, cool. So, all right. So you came out of law school, you want to do trial work. Did you go straight to a firm doing family law, or what was next?
I did. Right after, I mean, there was a small gap. I graduated, and I'm going to tell the world now my secrets. I graduated in 2002 and I started working full time in 2003. So for the 6 months between, or 8 months between my graduation and when I started working full time, I had been working during law school at a legal publishing company in New York. And I continued that work while I was interviewing so that I had the opportunity to be somewhat selective because I was blessed and employed tangentially in the industry at that point. But my first, work as a barred attorney doing real like litigation work was essentially straight out of law school to a firm. Yes.
And so how long were you there, and how long till you eventually went out to start your firm? Or
I was there for 8 years, at which point I started a prior iteration of the firm that I'm at now.
And so, some people always sort of knew they're going to start a firm at some point. What about you? Was that something you always knew you wanted to do, or was it sort of an accident?
No, it was sort of an accident. I never wanted to be a billable hour attorney in like law school. I had big dreams. I was going to, be a constitutional lawyer. I was going to work for the government. I was going to do like big things. And then I started interviewing and realized how poor and hungry I would be doing all of those things. And I had law school loans. So, like most people, I was like, ooh, capitalism. Let's see if I could pay that off for a little while. And at least at that point, I knew, okay, I'm going to work at a firm. And I enjoyed the firm I worked at. I learned a ton, but I had a family. During the time that I was working there, I got married. I had a child, and I was commuting 45 minutes in each direction to go to the firm absent any traffic. And I wanted to spend more time with my son. And so it was, pre-COVID era. So there wasn't all this hybrid work environment, and FaceTime was very important at that point, and putting in the hours in the office. And so I needed more flexibility. I needed more, opportunities to be closer to home. And that helped propel my decision to open a business.
So what was that, around 2009, 2010, somewhere around there?
2010.
Okay,
Correct.
so I remember those days. So that was the wake of the financial crisis, all the fallout.
Oh, yeah.
And, talking to somebody recently, I think 2010, I think is the worst year ever to graduate law school, probably. The jobs were just not there. The people were pulling back their offers and deferring and all these things. So you decide to go out and start a firm in the middle of this mess. What was going through your mind? And were you scared?
I was scared. I was very scared. At that point, my prior partner and I had decided that we were both leaving our respective firms. We knew that we had a decent amount of clients who would come with us. And I think like that's what we were counting on at the moment. We were young and naive. The words pipeline, future revenue weren't something that we really understood. We were lawyers and we were opening a law firm or a law practice. We weren't really thinking about a business or how to do that. We did understand networking. We understood business development because we had, during our respective, tenures at our firms, grown a small, a colleague of mine used the word pamphlet instead of a book of business, right? We each had a pamphlet of business, and we knew that somebody would come with us from our partners generations, and we counted our chickens. We were like, oh yeah, we have like 10 clients, 12 clients, like here's what it looks like, we can open a firm with that. And we did. And that felt really good until we were like, uh-oh, what are we going to do when these cases are over? And how are we going to feed ourselves? And the panic set in maybe a year later. And 2012 was a rough go.
I'll tell you, that panic and that fear will really get you doing stuff that maybe you wouldn't have done otherwise. So I imagine you just started really pushing it to get the clients.
It was interesting because I think a lot of, we knew how to practice law. So, the latter half of 2000, because we opened our firm officially, we pushed the button, let's call it, in July, but we opened the doors in August of 2010. So the rest of 2010 was kind of okay. 2011 was kind of okay. You're young attorneys, entrepreneurs, starting your practice. A lot of people are like, oh, let's throw you some cases, because we're like happy to see you on your own with your wings. So like you're all powered up with, woohoo, I'm getting business. And then you getting your hands around, opening bank accounts and trust accounts and having to do invoicing and maybe all the things that you kind of knew existed when you were pounding the pavement for somebody else, but you weren't in control of. And then, kind of you start to figure out those things, and then you look at the client pipeline and you're like, oh boy, I really need to do something to keep this afloat. And yeah, you start networking your little tush off at that point.
It's, before I started my firm, I'd always been at sort of long established platforms, and they weren't necessarily huge, but they were decent sized, and everything just sort of happened. It was magic. It just sort of, everything was there that you needed. But then when you start your own, you got to go buy the computer. You got to set up the email. You got to get the scissors. You got to go get the copier. You got to get the paper. It's like all these little things that you just don't think about that just take time. And it's just, you fill up your day with that, and you're like, wait a second, I couldn't practice any law today because I was doing all this other crap. Good thing is once you do it, usually it's sort of done, but it just, those early days take a lot of time, right?
Not only does it take a lot of time, but I think, like most people, you don't think about the small detail in the sense that, to your point, at a larger established, you go to the supply closet, you pull out the scissors that you said, or you pull out the legal pad, or you pull out the press board or the exhibit tabs, and then you start pricing all that stuff, and you're like, man, this is expensive. Like, how did press boards cost, $4 a piece? And you're like, I don't need those. I can find a better way to do it than use these. And you really start thinking about some of this stuff that just like, it's always the way it's been, and you need to find a creative solution to create another way because you're not paying for the way that it's always been.
Yeah, so you were lucky. You did have at least some clients. That's always good to get started with clients, paying clients coming in. So let me ask, how do you charge? I know most family lawyers charge by the hour, but there are some out there that do sort of flat fees or some sort of staged fee type stuff. How about you guys? How do you guys do it?
We are billable in the classic sense. We do bill by the hour. We take retainers up front. We've gotten smarter over the years, and we've taken an upfront retainer also for expenses because, that's when the client is not 100% paying their bill and you're still handing out money for the supplies and the filing fees and the like. It cuts into your profit, and, you learn over the course of the year. So yeah, standard classic billable by the hour retainer.
That is so important. I tell people I've done a lot of pro bono work over my career, and it wasn't on purpose, so. Yeah.
No, and sometimes you're surprised when you are at who wants you to do pro bono work and who leaves you with the pro bono work that you're done, and who will actually satisfy your bill that you didn't think was going to. It's a lesson in learning how to read people and read the situation as well, for sure.
So true. I've had, I represent a lot of lawyers now. This is before I represented lawyers. These are non-lawyers. My lawyer clients are good, but I had some that were like, extremely wealthy. I mean, it would have been nothing to pay their bill, but they just didn't like paying it. And they were always trying to nickel and dime and negotiate down. And it's just like, just pay the bill. I'm working my tail off for you. Pay right.
the legal industry is stunning to me, even though I've been practicing in it for, 22 years now. And I also think that my husband is like, one of these days, he's like, I don't understand. You cannot go to a car mechanic and tell them that you're not going to pay their bill and expect to get your car back. You don't go to the doctor and not pay your bill. And I was like, it's not the way things work in our industry. And because it's a litigious society, we're also the first people who can have our bills challenged. I mean, who doesn't love a good fee arbitration process? So, I mean, there's so many different things that you learn in our industry that you would not have thought of when you were sitting in those massive lecture halls in law school.
Speaking of litigious, I don't have the numbers. I've never really studied the numbers, but I've been told, and my understanding is that in the family law setting, I guess family lawyers are some of the highest recipients of bar complaints, and it's usually from the opposing party. I don't know. Have you encountered that at all? Is that something that you've had to deal with?
I think family lawyers do see a disproportionately higher series of bar complaints, fee arbitration, Google reviews
Oh,
that are
yeah.
not flattering. And you're dealing with people in one of the worst experiences in their lives, and people have expectations of how certain things are going to go. And the court system doesn't always make it easy to even provide a reasonable bar for those expectations. And I think it evokes a lot of heavy feelings, and it creates difficulty for those of us who practice in that
So
industry.
let's talk Google reviews real quick. So, as an ethics lawyer, I get this question a lot. You've got people that are not your client that are leaving you 1 star and they're dogging you. And maybe the worst case, they go on Facebook and get all their friends to start doing it too. I've seen that. And it's like, how do you deal with that as a business owner, period, but a law firm owner? And Google, not the easiest to deal with to get those things taken down. I don't know if you've ever had to deal with any of that kind of stuff. If you have any tips for anybody out there.
I mean, we tend to tread very lightly when it comes to responses to negative reviews on Google, because if they are our client, we're bound by privilege. And if they're not our client, we try to just say that we've searched our records and that we don't have a record of them being a client of the firm. But and then we try to address whatever issues. I had an experience where a client who clearly engaged the services of a law firm on Long Island with a close name but a different name for a different type of service, not a family lawyer, who left a review. He was clearly speaking about someone that doesn't work at our firm, and continued to create a 1 star review. I disputed this with Google. Our team disputed this with Google. We elevated it through Google. I mean, this was like a once a month, like 3 or 4 different ways to dispute the claim. But at some point, we just, we answered the review like, we're so sorry you had this experience with another law firm. Like, law firms should provide excellent service. If you didn't, receive that excellent service, of course you should be, entitled to complain. However, that service was not provided by us, nor do we do the type of law that you left a review for. Therefore, we wish you the best of luck. I mean, the best you can do
Yeah.
is kind of show a consumer that this doesn't relate to you and doesn't relate to your law firm, but also what value proposition you do stand for with the clients that you are going to have.
That's a good response. I like that. That was good. So let's get back to your firm. So you go out with the partner, you start your firm, and you do have some clients. The whole thing is sort of brand new. You're figuring out how to run a business and refill the pipeline with new clients. You said that was the initial firm, and it's changed since then. So tell us about how it changed.
Well, I had the distinct pleasure with my named partner now. I had the distinct pleasure when we were associates at our first law firms of having our partners had a case which they delegated to my partner and I, to Jamie and I, and we had the opportunity to work together as adversaries on a very heated, contested, acrimonious, custody and matrimonial case. And so we saw how we did business, and we liked the way that we respectively handled the case. We liked the way that we handled the clients and the opposing clients and the mediator. And at one point, while I opened my firm with my prior partner, my current partner had gone out on maternity leave and was looking to make a change from, a larger law firm to something more family oriented, because she too had just had her daughter. And really wanted to sort of shift from the rat race, I'll call it, to something more flexible, just as I had done 2 years before. So my prior partner and I had offered her the opportunity to come on of counsel and to be part of our firm and do work, in a different capacity. And so she did. And in 2015, she wound up becoming a partner with us. And shortly thereafter, my initial partner decided that she wanted to niche her practice and something more, contiguous to what we did, but really be able to service a different segment of the population in a sort of more targeted way. And we wished her the best of luck. And so Jamie and I changed the name of our firm and sort of pivoted from that point. And from 2015 on, we've been Jacobsberger and have been doing this marriage ever since.
I've known some other lawyers that are partners now that met as opposing counsel way back when. And it's a good lesson for those out there, the younger lawyers especially. You don't have to be a raging asshole to your opposing counsel. And you can be stern, you can be, a strong advocate, but, you don't have to be a jerk. And you never know where that might lead you. I've had plenty of opposing counsels that some of them are now clients of mine. They've referred me work over the years. And, there's all sorts of opportunities. It's just way better if you can. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes the opposing counsel is so bad, it's hard to be nice maybe. But yeah, you just, way back when, you probably had no idea that you guys would be partners and long-term partners now, right?
No, we had no idea. We thought maybe, one of us would leave our then firms and go work with the other because it would be more, more the merrier, right? The bigger the party at the place that you're at, the more enjoyable it is. But life circumstances change for everybody. And we laugh today, like, thank God that we weren't that way with each other. And we recognize that our clients were, fierce advocates, yes, difficult digging into their respective positions and trying to advocate for what they needed and what they wanted. But to your point, like, we didn't need to take that on in our relationship with each other. And it served us well because we saw a way to be good at our job without being, as you said, an asshole. And so that kind of resonated when we had an opportunity to build a business together. It's sort of an underpinning of the way that we practice and the team that we've built around us.
So how do you guys now as partners, well, how long have you two been partners now? How many years?
Okay, now you're going to make me do math. So I'm going to say 2015. I'm going to say that's 9 years. Yeah, 9 years. So, just about September 1st officially. She was partner in 2015, earlier than that. So let's say we've already hit the 9 year mark.
So you're going on a decade. So that's good. You're making it work. So how do you guys sort of split up the roles and responsibilities between you guys in running the firm and all of that?
So that's been a journey, as it is with a lot of different partners, right? You have to learn to trust each other. You have to learn to lean into to be sure that the other person is making decisions in a way that fits the vision and the mission of the firm and also, serves the whole. Primarily, I would say from a case perspective, we don't work a case together. There's the rare exception that we will work a case together. But with regard to the administrative duties in the firm, like, I handle more of the marketing and the client intake and sort of the back office administration in that sense. And she handles more of like the financial issues and the banking and things of that nature. It's our natural proclivity and our natural inclination. We each know how to do what the other does, and we each share a little bit of those responsibilities so that if someone's on vacation or on trial, like, it doesn't just fall into the black hole of doom. But we also hired smartly around us. We've hired, a good executive assistant and a good billing coordinator and a good intake coordinator. And we make sure that we have the right people in the right seats around us, and we really trust them to do their job and to elevate it to us when they need to. And that takes a lot of pressure off.
Yeah. So, a partnership is like a marriage in many ways.
Oh, yeah.
So, do you have any advice? And you're a family lawyer too. So do you have any advice for lawyers out there that are thinking about going into a partnership, or maybe in the early stages, advice on how to make it work and really make it thrive?
You have to really learn, and it's so trite when I say it, but it's really true. You have to learn how to listen and not just to speak. We, as lawyers, we're trained to be answering the question before it's even asked. We're always having something to say before somebody else is done. We've always thought of the next thing because we have to think on our feet, right? Especially if you're a trial attorney, you got to be out there. You got to know exactly what you're going to say when the judge says counsel. And that leaves very little room for listening. And one of the things that Jamie and I have learned over time is that we have to listen. We have to listen to the verbal cues that are coming from each other. We have to listen to the nonverbal cues that are coming from each other. We have to build like a community of respect. And one of the things that we've really worked on with each other is radical candor, like finding a way to say something bluntly and with honesty, but with compassion, and being able to hear it take some time, not get butt hurt by the statement, and finding then a path forward from it. And, we've come up with certain little community agreements. Like, I'll walk in and say, this is a feelings conversation, so that she understands, like, okay, we don't have something administrative to talk about. Like, I need to pay attention. Or she'll walk in and be like, this is not a feelings conversation. I have a decision that needs to be done, and I need you to focus on the next step. So, we've learned how to preface conversations. We've learned how to communicate with each other. And we've learned that we're on the same team. Like, a lot of people, stop bringing your ego to the room. If you want to be a partner with somebody, you're a partner. How you structure, whether you're, eat what you kill, whether you're, in it to win it and you're 50-50 or 33-33, whatever it is, you guys are all in the same team. If you're jointly succeeding, then everybody's succeeding, and so is your staff. And if you have ambient tension or overt tension, you're ruining the work environment for everybody else and for yourself. So it ultimately, that will crumble if you can't find a way to bridge a gap and put your ego behind you instead of out in front of you, which I think a lot of us as lawyers, we carry it in front of us because that's what we've been taught to do.
That team thing is so important. You sometimes you're just going to have to not win. If you want the team to win, you as the individual may not win, so to speak. But in the end, everybody wins, and you should come out ahead. So that's so important. You mentioned Radical Candor. That's a book, right? Have you read that? Is it worth reading?
Yes, I have, actually.
I think I need to read that. So do you recommend it?
So I'm going to admit this out loud, and it probably makes me a bad person, but I really do not like business books. I struggle getting through them. I know that this is a whole like area of self-improvement. I have a list of books from professionals that I should be reading, The 4-Minute Manager, blah, blah, blah. It is for agreements. Like, it is impossible. I'm reading a science textbook to me. I struggled my way through Radical Candor, not because I didn't think that the messaging was important, but I just dial out at some point. If it was a podcast, I think I might do better. But the meaning of it really is impactful and helpful. And if you can learn to practice it in your four walls, it can be changing.
Real quick, thanks for listening. If you're getting any value out of this podcast, please take 2 seconds to hit the subscribe button and leave a 5-star review. It would really mean a lot to me. Now back to the show. So let's talk about the growth of your firm. You went through some of the stats earlier. You got a pretty decent sized operation there. You got a lot of staff, you got a lot of attorneys. Take us through sort of the growth. When did you started out with you and the other partner. You brought at least Jamie on in some role early on. When did you start adding more attorneys and staff?
My prior partner and I added pretty early. Like, we added at least a receptionist or a legal assistant pretty early because you need another body. Like, if you're in court, if you're on the phone, if you're practicing, you can't be answering the phone. You can't be taking intakes. You can't be making copies. Can't put a motion together. You need bodies in the office. It was a struggle because, when you're young and you're just starting out, everything costs money, and, feeding another person and being responsible for their salaries and their families, well-being is scary to you. It was scary to me. Maybe it's not scary to other people, but it is a necessity. You can only survive if you have good people around you helping you from a day-to-day perspective. We grew the team, I don't want to say rapidly, but by 2015, we had 2 named partners at that point. Jamie was an of counsel. We had 3 assistants at that point, playing functions between paralegals, legal assistant, receptionists, like billing coordinator. Like they were wearing multiple hats, but it was out there. And, my partner and I at the time, and to some extent, Jamie, were also taking some of those administrative roles from, let's call it the C-suite level, if you will. We moved from a more remote area of Morris County in New Jersey to Morristown, where we are now, which is a more like city area. And we expanded the team at that point to bring on an associate because we knew that we needed somebody, underneath us to be doing more of, let's say, the case information statements and the discovery and, kind of like the legal brief writing. And while we were continuing to do consults and networking and bringing in business, the team kind of rolled from there. Like we've added and subtracted probably within a realm over the same 9 years. I would say at that point, maybe we were 6 and now we're 10. So we've expanded to a full-time billing coordinator and a full-time slash like receptionist slash intake coordinator instead of that being some of our legal assistants. And we've added attorneys to the roster because that's how we practice.
So I'm curious, how do you go about analyzing or making the decision, okay, it's time to hire somebody? There's a question a lot of attorneys, especially when they first start out, they're like, oh my God, I can't afford it. It's too risky. I'm too scared. I'm not going to hire anybody. And then you have various financial advisor types that'll come in and say, all right, we'll help analyze your cash flow. And this is when you do it. And then the fear is, I don't have the work yet, but I think I might get it. So do I hire the person before or when I'm underwater? How do you go about deciding when it's time to hire somebody and who?
I think that the answer to that question has changed over time, right? Depending on where we've been in the size of our business, the revenue health of our business, the profit health of our business. I think in the beginning it was out of sheer desperation. Like I could not be 5 different roles in one and be able to meet my obligations and go to court and service my clients. And I didn't want malpractice to be something that was alleged that I committed. So it was fear, I think, at that point, right? Like you put the money aside and you do what you need to do in order to make sure that you can continue doing what you're doing and that you don't kind of implode on yourself. And then I think there was a period of time where it was, gut intuition. Like there were too many cases and they couldn't be serviced. And so somebody else had to be put on the file. And so, okay, an associate needs to be put on so I can complete the discovery and the letter writing and the case information statement while I'm sitting and doing the consultations or being in court. Then I think there was a period of time where we were driven by the metrics, by the business numbers. Like, how do we increase revenue X amount? How do we put, best use of our time, highest and best use on who can be sitting in the roles in a more effective situation? And if you follow that, I think you could wind up, with a very large team and very little profit because you slot everybody into a certain role and then you're like, great, how do I pay for all of this?
Mm-hmm.
So, and then at least now it's by quality of life. I don't want to work all weekend long. I don't want to work at night. I don't want to be away from my family. I don't want to not be able to take vacation. I want my team to experience the same thing that I'm experiencing. We want to have I know we want the mythical work-life balance, though it actually can exist. And we want to keep the team in a space where no one person is overly burdened to the benefit of others and their own detriment. And so when it gets to a point where you see that your team is starting to become bogged down, you're starting to become bogged down, the indicators are there. Then double back, check your metrics, check your money, make sure it's affordable. What does your pipeline look like? How will this, help you? Will it hurt you in the interim? And if so, how do I, correct it after I make that choice for the quality of life? And you make strategic decisions at that point. That's after a lot of lessons learned.
So how did you learn this stuff? Is it trial and error for you? Did you have coaches, podcasts? You read maybe the first chapter of a few books here and there, but
don't commit me to a full chapter. That seems ridiculous. Maybe a couple of pages. I read the Cliff Notes version, and I'm a healthy reader. It's just business books, man. You give me fiction, I'm off and running. But a combination of all of the above, like a lot of trial and error in our early years. I think putting the business together, getting it off the ground, and like figuring out where the implosion point was, and then sort of breaking it and reconstructing it. But then, yes, we had a lot of business coaching. We joined a coaching company in 2016, and we were heavily let me back up. We were invested kind of in an in and out basis over the last 7 years. We've been a little more out this year than we've been in, because coaching itself can be tiring, and sometimes like the lesson and the time committed to the coaching takes away from the rest of the firm, and you need a little bit of break, and then you need to recommit, or you need to try a different form of coaching. But yeah, really being open to listening to other people, to the options that are they've done, watching other people's lessons, taking what you can from it, applying it to your firm, and leaving the rest. Just learning, always learning.
Yeah. For me, that's sort of the fun part. I mean, some of the lessons I don't like learning, but prefer to not have learned them. But sometimes it's funny, you have coaches, you have books, you have podcasts, whatever, and intellectually, this, the answer, but it's like you have to go through it sometimes. You just have to go through it and really learn it through experience sometimes, and sort of sucks, and then you'll never forget it. All right, so hiring. So you sort of now have your system about when to hire. I'm curious, how do you guys find the people? So this is a question I get a lot, and I'm curious myself. Like, I want somebody in this role. So how do you find the right person? So that can be lots of things. I mean, how do you decide what the skill set is, or the personality or culture fit that you want is? And then how do you craft, job posting, whatever it is, to try to attract the right person? And then you get some people in, and then how do you screen them out? Have you figured that out?
Magic. So we really do try to define the role that we're hiring for. And for most of those roles, we already have job descriptions written with KPIs for the jobs, but we try to refine that if we think that maybe the description is stale, or it will cross over, or we give 2 job descriptions instead of a hybrid description, so that they know sort of like they're wearing 2 different hats. And then we usually try to write the job ad from the job description, so that we extract kind of the culture piece of the firm, but also the key things that the job will require, and sort of put that in the ad. We put that out. We're always recruiting. Like, our website has a careers page, and it always has an advertisement for a legal assistant and an attorney, because very specifically, we're always looking for that. If we're hiring for something else of a more like distinct role, we'll add it to the website at that time. We'll pump it out over, we use Wise Hire, so it'll pump out over Indeed and Monster and LinkedIn, and, all the things. We, as part of our Wise Hire profile, we have them take a disc assessment, and we don't, pin all of our hopes and dreams on the disc assessment, but we've learned how to read them for red flags, but also green flags, and then also things that require kind of more follow-up and investigation during the course of the interview process. We'll pre-screen them. We'll give them a written quiz. We'll bring them in for a personal interview. If we really think that they could be a great fit, we introduce them to a key member of the team that they're going to work closely with, and try to ascertain, whether that's what their read on the person is. Sometimes we'll have them come back for a second interview if we think that it seemed really great, or we weren't sure about this or that. A lot of it comes down to gut intuition, because you know what the culture of your team is. We do have a values and a mission statement, and we try to make sure we bring that up pretty clearly in our interview process, so that we're putting it out there and trying to make sure that they align with the value system of the firm. We are radically candid in our interviews. Like, we tell them exactly what they're, we don't need to, and I say this with humility, not with hubris. We don't need to impress you. We need to explain to you the culture and what you're going to get when you work here. If it's not a good fit for you, that's cool. And then it won't be a good fit for us either. So I'd rather explain that at the beginning, instead of kind of sugarcoat it and then surprise you when you walk in the door that it's not exactly what was advertised. We advertise exactly what you're going to experience.
I think that's so important. You don't want them to have the misimpression, and then both of you find out later, and you both wasted your time. I like the other thing you said is you're always recruiting. I've sort of come to that conclusion. You just should always be looking, because you just never know. And the timing it's never perfect. So it's like, if you're always looking and then the timing sort of lines up, boom, you jump on it. So I think that's huge. So shifting a little bit, You've been at this for a while, both as a, attorney, owner, you've gone through partners, you've hired a lot of people. What's a typical week or maybe month like for you in terms of client work versus firm work versus marketing, that kind of thing?
My calendar kind of looks like Tetris. I'm always trying to slot something in somewhere. We've gone through so many different iterations. We've blocked our calendar. We've done a day system. We've done morning this, afternoon that. It doesn't work. We work with the court. The court doesn't care. The court's like, your plans are out the window. Show up for this, show up for that. We're changing our day and time. It's about currently, I would say unfortunately, it's like 80% client work and 20% admin work. You asked me this a year ago, I would have told you the exact opposite, that it was 80% business work and 20% client work. It's really hard to say week to week. It kind of depends on what the cadence of the cases is that we're working on, how many we have on our plate at any given time. There's never enough time for anything. So kind of I try to prioritize based on what's on fire and what I need not to burn and what are required things. I mean, there's always things, right, that always get done. You're always going through your banking. You're always going through your billing. You're making sure those things are always getting done. You're always making sure that your trust account management is getting done. The other stuff, it'll happen when it happens. I have a really good EA who hands me a to-do list every single day and then pokes me physically sometimes, 2 or 3 times a day. Did you get to this? Did you get to this? I'll get like pop-up reminders on my calendar with fun little sayings of things that I haven't done yet that I promised her I would do in the next hour. So I think it's really about your team and making sure that you have people that can read you and who can help you be supported.
That sounds so familiar to me. Just all the time. It's like there's not enough. It's just fires everywhere. I feel you. And, as a litigator, it's when the court is throwing things in your lap and they're saying you got to be there, it's hard to focus on the firm sometimes because you've blocked out some time. You're like, I'm going to do it on this day, and then boom, the day's gone. So how have you balanced the growing of your firm and the continued growth that you've had and maybe you want to continue having with, dealing with clients and the courts and all that? How do you make it work?
Delicately. I think some days are really good and some days are just not so good. Some days the clients own us and some days the business, comes before the clients because it's just a priority and you have to get something done. Otherwise, you can't service the clients the next day. It's hard. Like next week, I had a court appearance set for Monday. I structured my entire week around that. And I found out by accident through the child support system that recorded it to my client before we got the notice, like, hey, that hearing's off on Friday and now it's on for Monday and it's on for Friday afternoon when you've already committed to a mediation with accountants. And I'm just like, I don't know how I'm going to get that done. So, then it's firing off this letter and that letter and calling this person and calling that person. And sure, the banking thing I had to do yesterday didn't get done because I had to handle that and get my calendar set. So it's not easy, but you learn your strengths and you learn the strengths of the people around you. And if you're smart, you delegate your stuff to their strengths and you handle what you can handle and you don't try to own it all or have them own it all. You make sure you prioritize what needs to get done, but you also make sure that you give the people who can do it better than you the things that you can't do and you keep the things that you can and you do that yourself.
So a corollary type question on this, time is lacking. You've got firm commitments, client commitments, and you're in an extremely high stress practice area, I would imagine. You've got clients that are upset. You got to deal with that. And you've got your family and all that. So how do you manage your stress level and just doing it all? What are some of the things that you do for yourself?
I mean, the question I think we should all ask is our stress level managed? I would probably say the answer to the question is no, but at least if I haven't, killed anyone in the day, it's probably good for me. Finding joy in the things that actually can provide levity in the day. I mean, our team's a really tight team. We do really heavy work at a really high level, but we laugh a lot with each other. We find, that Starbucks run is kind of essential in the middle of the day. I spend a lot of time trying to turn my brain off. I exercise, which I think is good for my body and my mind, but I also, I try to find time that I'm not doing something heavy, like we're watching a show or I'm getting my nails done, which I know sounds very, whatever, but squeezing in those things and not letting them fall to the bottom of the list, because then the cup is just completely empty. It's finding little drops to put in the cup so that there's something left for when, the proverbial shit hits the fan, you have something to draw from.
So key. So had some pretty good growth of your firm. What do you see? What's your long-term vision? Are you where you want to be? Is there more that you want? Is it different?
There's more in the tank for us. I know that Jamie and we are considered small and boutique, and we want to stay in that general realm because we do believe it's good for the culture. It's also good for the clients. We do want to expand a little bit more. As I told you before we started this podcast, I'm borrowing the office that I'm sitting in right now. It's part of the suites that we own, but it's not my particular office because we're in the middle of a physical lease expansion. And surprise, we walked in this morning to them doing the floors when they thought they were doing it over the weekend. So I'm currently relocated and not in my normal habitat. So we are making room for additional attorneys and legal assistants in the next, span of time, TBD what that means. But the more people we can add to our team, the more people we can service. And the more people we service, the more families we actually help. The more families we help, the better we feel. So it's kind of a nice circle in that sense, despite the work that we do.
So how do you don't have to give us all your secrets, but how do you get your clients? Is it referral, word of mouth? Is it internet? Is it a combination of a lot of different things? What are the sort of marketing approaches you guys take?
We do a cross section. We're family law. We're always going to get a large base of referrals from colleagues, other professionals that we work in, friends, family, former clients, current clients. We're the type of industry where you really want somebody that you trust. You don't want to open the proverbial yellow pages and just pluck a name out because they're close. You really want somebody who's had a positive experience and felt like it would be a good personal fit. But this is the age of the internet, as we all know, the age of AI, really, if you will, and online advertising is a thing. So we're invested in that. We spend a lot of time on social media managing our branded content and trying to put out there what is reflective of who we are and what our values are. So it's kind of a little bit of everything.
So social media, what are your best channels? I'm curious.
So I think we get a lot of interaction with both Facebook and Instagram. I think we use YouTube, which a lot of people don't, and people have found us through there, which surprised me, frankly, because my marketing team was like, this is a way. And I was like, nobody watches that stuff. Like my kid watches it for gaming, but I'm like, who's looking for a lawyer on YouTube? But I think that everything's connected to everything these days, right? So you see a TikTok video about that leads you to somewhere else, that leads you to a YouTuber, that leads you to an advertisement, and it kind of just spills from there, right? So I think since the world is interconnected, as long as you're out there and you're putting your presence in some place that somebody can find it, we've gotten a lot of great response from podcasts just like yours, like being hosted by people who have audiences that care about the things that we want to talk about. And then they just, they find us on our socials or on our website, and then they call because, that's people need a little confidence to call our office because it's a big first step. So I think when they get to know us a little bit in other locations and get to know like who we are and what our voice sounds like, both, on paper, but also real time like this, I feel like they are more comfortable making that first call.
Yeah, I'm with you. You got to really do all the above. It's sort of a mix. So for me, I want to do it all, but also you can't do it all at once. So you got to do it one by one, but you do need to sort of add it all. It's funny, I've got a YouTube channel. I put this podcast on there, some other things on there. It's not a huge channel or anything. And I remember my kids when they're like, "You have a YouTube channel?" I'm like, yeah. It's like, go subscribe. So, 2 of my subscribers are my kids. So, tell them.
You got to get their friends
I know.
to subscribe.
I think they did get a couple of them.
Get the ripple effect.
Yeah, apparently it's the funniest thing. My son was telling me that some of his friends found some of my videos and they thought it was just the funniest thing that I'm on the internet. I'm like, whatever. But it's working. People are finding me somewhere, right?
You're there. People are seeing you. Right. That means it works.
That's right. So what's the best part in your mind of owning your own firm? What's your favorite part?
Oh boy, that's a good question. I don't think everybody needs to ask me what my favorite part is. I guess I have two parts that I'm really grateful for, and I'll say grateful because I don't know that they would be my favorite. One is the sheer flexibility that owning my own business provides for me. I'm able to be present for my family when I want to be and how I want to be in ways that I don't know that I would be able to do that if I wasn't my own boss. And that's a huge priority for me. My parents are divorced. They got divorced when I was in law school. I can't say that they had the most fantastic relationship prior to the time that they got divorced. And so, as a kid, it was just a really weird environment, I guess, to grow up in. And I don't want my son to ever think that A, I chose work over him, or B, that other people's breakdown of their families was more important than having an intact one of our own. So I'm really grateful for being able to be there for all his milestones and like barely missing anything important that, is near and dear to his heart, and being able to just be like a champion for him with my husband. So that's a really big piece of gratitude and a really big motivator for why I did what I did to begin with in the beginning of this journey. But two, my team is kick ass. Like, we have built such a great network around us. Like, they really put 150% into everything that they do. They love their job, even when it drives them nuts. They want to help people. And that's hard. It's hard to find great people with good work ethic in this day and age, but it's also hard to find good people with great work ethic who also have a heart and are full of compassion and humanity. And every single person that's in this office is like filled with that. And it brings me joy every day to make it known that I'm supporting their families and their lives and helping them live a better life. And in turn, they're helping our clients live a better life.
I tell you, being part of a strong team, there's something special about that. So that's really cool that you've got that. Keep that as you grow. That's good. So just a couple more questions. If I am a young lawyer out there who's thinking about starting a firm, or maybe I've just started my firm, any pieces of advice that you have for them as they sort of start down this path?
Find a new profession. No, be open to advice, but don't necessarily feel that you are compelled to absorb every single thing that you think has been successful for somebody else and mimic it identically, because it may not be your special sauce. Like, listen carefully and then be judicious about what you want to try and be open to trying it. But like I said before, check your ego. You're not necessarily the smartest person in the room. You might be at some point, and maybe you are now, but you're not going to know that until you're listening and assessing for your own. And every single person you meet, like them, don't like them, think their war stories are good, bad, or indifferent, they will have something to teach you about what to do or what not to do. And a lot of times you can learn what not to do by watching and listening to other people also. And I feel like everybody's so busy trying to learn what to do that they forgot what not to do. And sometimes those lessons are equally as valuable, if not more so.
That's huge. I've learned a lot of what not to do over the years from people. So yeah, that's great advice. So for people out there that want to find you, get in touch with you, what's the best way? What are your social media handles? How can people find you?
So our website is www.jacobsberger, that's BERGER.com. Our Facebook is at Jacobsberger LLC something. I don't even know, to be honest. I know our LinkedIn is at Jacobsberger LLC. You can find us on Facebook, though, just by typing in Jacobsberger LLC. We will come up. We have a page. And you can call 973-710-4366. Carrier pigeon. We welcome those. Any way you want to find us, you're going to be able to stumble across us on the internet.
Well, Sarah, thanks for joining us. This has been fun. You've got a lot of good stuff.
I've had a great time, Jonathan. Thank you so much for allowing me the platform to talk about my, wise adventures and also my amazing team. Thank you.
I'm excited to see the continued growth and see where you guys end up.
Yeah, thanks. And for you too. I'm watching you carefully.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Founding Partner Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts to stay up to date on the latest episodes. You can also connect with Jonathan on LinkedIn and check out the show notes with links to resources mentioned throughout our discussion. by visiting www.yourlawfirmgc.com. We'll see you next time for more origin stories and insights from successful law firm founders.